So, in this video, I will be rambling about my interest in horror and how it has changed over time. Hello, everyone! I am going to be talking about my interest in horror for this video. And to begin, I would like to start that when I was very young, I was already interested in horror. It has been a lifelong thing, and there was never a time where I specifically got into it. I simply was already into it. And this interest has lasted ever since my interest in anything began. But I do recall that when I was younger, maybe age 7 to 10 years old, around that time, my interest in horror was mostly limited to gore and guts, things like that. I was very into bloody things. Examples of what I was into happened to include things like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, or my favorite film at the time was either 13 Ghosts, which was awfully explicit, and there was Jeepers Creepers, which was pretty morbid itself. This interest quickly developed into an interest in psychological horror, which showed when I very quickly and very intimately got interested in Silent Hill as a whole series, but particularly the second game. I am actually still absolutely in love with the Silent Hill series, and it is the foundation for what I'm into today. But my interest in Silent Hill was very, very passionate. It was very intense, and I have stayed very into it since I got into it. However, when I first got into it, I was still very much into the gore aspect of it. That slowly faded away to what I feel now about it, which is that, sure, it's nice to look at in circumstances, certain ones, but ultimately I'm looking for something deeper than just what it is visually. I'm very into the storytelling aspect of horror nowadays. So I would say that when I was about 12 years old and I got into Silent Hill, that was the middle of one extreme I was in to the extreme I'm in today. I went from being into something very gore-driven and not story-driven at all, to being into something that is purely story-driven with no need for any gore in the first place. I still am, however, interested in gore due to my interest in human anatomy and the human body. I simply think it is pleasing to look at aesthetically in certain senses. I think pictures from things like car crashes are pretty repulsive because they're dirty, they're simply tragedies that happened. But nowadays I am into both the gore, just not focused on it, as well as the story, which is what I am completely focused on. When I was a child, I was actually not into the story at all. I would simply watch horror films to skip to the gory scenes, which is, when you look at it, really questionable for someone who was my age, which was, say, 7, 8 years old. I know my current taste in horror could be summed up with things like Silent Hill, once again, however, more so the parts of it that are not so much driven by gore, of course, and rather parts driven by body horror and plot. That would definitely define my current taste, along with certain horrors like the film Get Out, which had a great, creepy atmosphere, which is what I aim for with everything I create now as an artist, because personally, I find subtle and creepy horror to be the best horror. It's simply a personal preference, but it's the opposite of a jump scare. It's the thing that slowly puts fear into you that just lasts. And that is honestly the type of scare that I enjoy, and that I enjoy seeing in others, because I like to empathize with that. Anyway, I'm sure this rambling has been awfully weird if you're not very into horror yourself, but I would like to thank you for listening and watching my video. I will see you guys again soon. Thank you again.